Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Iron Canon podcast, your home for in-depth discussion on the lore, the High Republic, and the whole canon of the galaxy far, far away. My name is Matthew, and I'm coming to you from the Underworld North Studio in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. As always, I'm joined from across the border, across the continent, by your friend and mine, Mr. Joel Davis. Joel, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing good, and I want to thank Prime Minister Joe and Donald Trump for coming to an agreement to allow this podcast to continue without tariffs. I do not want my super chats to have to go and increase price because of that now, because they're going to Canada. So, hooray for open
Question.
borders trade of Star Wars podcast.
There we go. Prime Minister Joe. It's like Justin Trudeau.
I said
Oh,
Justin
you
Trudeau.
said Trudeau. You said Trudeau. It's just kind of fast. Anyway, fair enough. Yeah, it's been a week. It's been a day here on this side of the border. There we go. But yeah, this week, shiver me timbers, mend the braces, other pirate words we don't fully understand might be made up. Star Wars went full on treasure adventure in Skeleton Crew. Its latest foray into live action streaming shows, and that turned out to be one of the most pleasant surprises in recent years, and managed to serve up a hidden treasure we never expected to find, a universally beloved story from the galaxy far, far away. So journey with us this week as we look back on this exciting, heartfelt, and incredibly well-crafted show. And I was about to bring him in. Yes, I don't know if he's what's going on there. You can see on the chat there. We'll bring him in when he's ready. I guess. Oh, there he is. Okay. Yes, you guys can see on the screen there. Yeah, this podcast is now 66% Canadian, not 25% Canadian, but joining us from Underworld North Annex over there, it's the guy from the flagship show, Mr. Dominic Jones. How's it going, Dom?
Yeah, the taxation of trade routes are in dispute. I mean, who'd have thunk it? Certainly not George Lucas 25 years ago or
26
more, 26 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, but very excited to be here. You said flagship.
There we go.
The flag, the SM33 flag behind me. And yeah, I think this is the geographically most distant episode of Ion Canon, because you go all the way around the world that way and come like almost like 99.99999% back over here. So like go the long way. There's no crossing this way between us. You got to go the far way, all the way around the world. So geographically furthest, not closest.
There's a problem.
From a certain point of view.
From a certain point of view. What if I need to go to the washroom?
Gotta go the other way.
Go the other way. All right. I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out.
Start walking.
All right.
For the
see
best.
You guys.
See if there's a Tim Hortons somewhere between here and
Actually,
there you go.
Just down the street.
Give us the wrong way.
Anyways,
the wrong way.
Yeah, the wrong way. Yeah. So yeah, thanks, Tom, for coming on. I'm going to chat about Skeleton Crew as mentioned, but let's get to some of the quick plugs out of the way. You can follow us on Blue Sky at Iron Canon, on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at Iron Canon Pod, EYEONCANONPOD. Also follow us if audio is more your speed. Right after this episode, I will pop this up onto Spotify and Apple Podcasts, so you can listen to it anywhere in the world, as far as I know, cross borders, whatever, what have you. Audio only if you prefer. Yeah, okay. You do that. Speaking of political stories, very political story. Yes, my copy of Reign of Empire is sitting right there, and Dom is just reading, spoiling himself. You haven't even started that thing. Anyway,
I'm saying you don't need me for this part, so I'll just I'll kick back.
Okay, you do.
Catch up with last command.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So did you check that? Actually, I was about to shout out the Star Wars Underworld Podcast Network. We are proudly part of the Star Wars Underworld Podcast Network. By flagship, I mean the Star Wars Underworld Podcast. That is Thursday nights right here on the YouTube channel. Yes, SM33 is on the show apparently. Flagship. Yeah, the Star Wars Underworld. Train of thought, Matthew. Star Wars Underworld Podcast Network. Here on this Underworld YouTube channel again. The flagship podcast, Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Yeah, where the name comes from, this thing here. But here on the YouTube channel, we do have tariff-free super chats, tariff-free memberships, as far as I know. There we go. And of course, a tariff-free Discord server where you can, down in the description, you can get a Minty Fresh link and join the chat, join the fun. The water's fine. We don't really talk politics all that much in there, but I suppose we could if we wanted to. If we wanted to keep it civil and kind and friendly, and if we have things to chat about, mostly about Star Wars, different kinds of Star Wars conversations, but also yes, bit of Marvel, bit of Star Trek, bit of sports, bit of everything. So yeah, please join in. And speaking of which, there are usually events and different things happening. So Joel, what's shaking down in the Discord?
Well, last week we had a fun movie night watching The Land Before Time, a George Lucas and Steven Spielberg produced movie directed by the great Don Bluth, master of animation. And this week we're going to a tried and true game night just to keep the balance going. So
Right on.
be looking forward to that. We can play Fortnite, Overwatch, Fall Guys, Apex, maybe Star Wars Hunters, whatever else we can find. So yeah, lots of fun. Join us this Friday, 6:30 p.m. Pacific, 9:30 p.m. Eastern.
Right on. Yeah, definitely. I say this every week. What you guys have done, you and Ben have done with the Discord server, the community that's growing. Again, these things require a lot of work and a lot of time. You guys have kept it going, so much appreciated. Last plug to get to right here on the Star Wars Underworld podcast network, right on the YouTube channel and Facebook and Twitch yeah, we got these Tractor Beam Comics reviews. Wednesdays are for comics are for Wednesdays, and this Wednesday it's a week long remembered, week anticipated, highly anticipated Legacy of Vader #1, written by Mr. Charles Soule. So Joel, you're joining us for that, our resident sequelist coming in. It's a Kylo Ren book all about Darth Vader. Should be great. And then we're also, as promised, going back in time to the High Republic, talking about Tempest Breaker, the audio play by Cavan Scott, just to get everyone caught up for Fear of the Jedi, the comic book by Cavan Scott that comes out a week later. So coming out next week. So we're gonna, I believe next week. Yeah, I believe that's right. So we're gonna finally do our review of that audio drama. And so yeah, keep it locked here. Underworld YouTube channel, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, Wednesday night for that. All right, plugs out of the way. Dom, it is time to talk. Gotta use our week in Star Wars. Dom, I'll throw this to you. How have you been Star Warsing this week?
How
Not
have I been podcasting?
Star Wars.
Yeah, there you go. That's how I've been Star Warsing, is by podcasting.
Wait, what podcast are you on? No, I'm just kidding.
Oh no, nobody's ever heard of it. Yeah. I was trying to think of like a good story to tell. I was trying to think of like something that's other than just like a cheap plug for a podcast or a Substack, DominicGJones.substack.com, and trying to come up with something else. And I realized that the story I wanted to tell is actually from 8 days ago. So we're gonna stretch out the definition of a week by a little bit, and I'll tell you about how I rescued a precious artifact from my parents' house. I was over at my parents' house for dinner. And as we're getting ready to leave, my mom says, "Oh, we were going through the cupboard under the stairs in the basement, and we found that old Darth Vader helmet that you used to have, and we're going to take it to, like the thrift store. We're going to donate it." And I said, "No, you're not. I'm taking that with me." And my mom said, "Why? What could you?" I said, "It's an important part of my legacy, of my history, of my Star Wars fandom, because I had thought it was lost. I'd never expected to see this thing again. This thing that, so it's the Darth Vader voice changer from 2005. So this is like a Revenge of the Sith artifact. This thing is literally 20 years old now this year. And I remember getting it because back around Christmas, or not Christmas, Halloween 2004, I wanted to be Darth Vader for Christmas. And for whatever reason, there were no Darth Vader costumes around that year. It was in between the prequel movies. There wasn't one around. And so I had to be something else. I think my mom helped me make an Obi-Wan Kenobi costume. But like a couple months afterwards, all the Revenge of the Sith merch is hitting, and there's the Darth Vader voice changer. And my mom was very good at not giving in to peer pressure from her children over the years. Me and my brother would frequently try to convince her to buy us things like, Lego Death Stars and that sort of thing. And she was very good about saying, no, 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 no. We had lots of toys, but she was very good at like keeping us in check, making sure we didn't go overboard. But somehow we convinced her to buy this thing at like its most expensive, when it was like, probably $50-$60, which, even now that'd be a lot, but this was 2005, so even more so. And we somehow convinced her to buy it. We had it for years and for years and years. And like, but like a couple months later, like after the movie had come out, we found it again at another store for like 50% off. And my mom was so scandalized that she had bought it all this time earlier at full price. And those memories always just stuck with me. So I had to rescue the Vader helmet. It's now in a pile of crap in my bedroom, waiting to be placed in a spot of honor. Should I ever figure out where that spot of honor is? But yeah, so that's my Star Wars story. I don't know if that's what you were expecting.
Yeah,
That's what you got.
It's a grab bag. It's anything goes. Anything related to Star Wars, even tangentially, potentially. But yeah, that's a great story. I have one of those too, so we can just have dueling masks somewhere in the apartment somewhere. Like Vader and Vader.
I try not to be a caricature because
What? Of course not.
because
Of course we do.
if people were like, "Oh, you guys are roommates, what must it be like? You're probably just sitting around wearing Darth Vader helmets together." No, that's not what we do most
Wait,
of the time.
it isn't?
We have yet to do that once, but apparently we now have the option if we
have the
wanted to.
option.
So
And we've had the option for clones for
yeah, clone helmets too. I don't know. The next
I remember the commercial for that Vader
yeah, it
helmet
was sick.
years
Yeah,
ago.
cool.
It was sick. Well, there
Mhm.
was like a whole
Yeah.
series. The episode 3 commercials were amazing because there were also those lightsabers that were coming out, and they had the one that was the Anakin lightsaber that would change
Yeah, I
from
remember that
blue to
too.
red.
Yeah.
And I think the commercials were like they like crossed over and they promoted multiple things. But I do think so that Anakin saber that turns from blue to red, I suspect, we saw an Acolyte this year, the moment when Osha's lightsaber goes from blue to red. I think that was originally planned for Revenge of the Sith because there's
I think
enough
there's story art about that
yeah,
too.
there's enough concept art of the duel on Mustafar where Anakin has a red lightsaber and Obi-Wan has a blue lightsaber. I wonder if there was going to be a moment where that happened and that toy was meant to be more than just, hey, isn't it cool that you could switch from dark to light? It was going to like recreate a moment from the movie. But I suspect the reason that they didn't go with it ultimately is the same reason we have Luke's green lightsaber in Revenge of the Sith, which is in Revenge of the Sith, in Return of the Jedi. Because in Return of the Jedi, Luke's lightsaber is originally supposed to be blue. You can still go back and watch the original teaser for the movie, and it is blue in that. But they realized shooting the lightsaber against the bright blue sky of California there to stand in for Tatooine, it didn't look very good. The lightsaber didn't show up, so they changed it to green so it would show up better against the blue sky. What color is everything on Mustafar?
Red and black.
Red, exactly. So imagine shooting, shooting the scenes and then making the lightsaber red. It's not going to show up very well in front of the lava.
Yeah.
Whereas the blue, as we see in the movie, pops. It looks fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
So just have 2 blue lightsabers.
Yeah.
It's
looks better
funny.
on screen.
It's funny you mentioned that because now I actually thought about this and I never brought it up because I haven't had a good week of Star Wars to bring this up. I've always now wondered, like, what is going to be like the in-universe lore explanation to why Anakin's saber never bled red when he was enraged? It's like Anakin probably had more rage in him than Osha was when she was choking out Soul. So it's like, why isn't that happening to his lightsaber? It's like, I think Anakin's probably even more furious at Mustafar and in the temple at that point. So I'm like, what's the explanation they're going to cook up for that reason?
Here's what I would go with is that Anakin knows what he's doing is wrong. And I think he's always knows this. He knows this from the moment he turns to the dark side to the moment that he turns back. He knows that it's wrong because there's that great moment in Revenge of the Sith. It's very subtle of Anakin looking out at the lava after he's murdered all the Separatist leaders. And you see the single tear roll down his eyes. Like he knows what he's done is wrong. And everything else he's doing, he's just convincing himself that it's okay. He knows it's wrong. And he still knows it's wrong decades later when Luke says, I feel the conflict in you. There is good, yada, yada, yada. He goes, it's too late for me, son. Not, I can't, not, I believe in this, not, this is who I am. Don't judge me. It's too late for me. you could have, I could have turned back, but I can't because it's too late. He thinks he's too far gone, but he knows what he's been doing is wrong. So that would be the answer I would go with. Osha's very, you know, in the moment, very raw, very, like it's, I think the feeling, the power, the betrayal, Stoll stood in for what she believed in was right, what she believed in was good, and then he turned out to actually be lying to her. So she feels really betrayed. So I think there is like a feeling of maybe his way is wrong and the right way is what that sexy dude with the arms is saying. And whereas, like I said, Anakin seemingly always knows that
Get on
what
story.
he's doing is wrong.
Add that retcon into the lore
Well,
somewhere.
Yeah.
So I mean, it does
Leland
bring
G,
up,
give me a call.
Yeah, I mean, it does bring up the thing I think about Vader all the time. That what he is, Darth Vader is the failed attempt to forget Anakin Skywalker, and that really does come to the fore in Charles Soule's 2017 comic, where we see the moment. Right, he goes down to the cave of Mustafar. He has a vision of returning to Obi-Wan and saying, "I'm sorry, I was wrong. I'm done with this. Take me back, please. I'll do whatever penance I need to do." And he has to actively choose to reject that vision, and that's the moment he bleeds his crystal. And he has to just choose to turn away from his own conscience within himself. And so then the crystal can bleed. It is an interesting point. You have to definitely, it's not magic, it's actually, the force, connecting to the force, your will connecting to the force, and you actually have to will away from it. Maybe I will say maybe that's why it took longer, took more time, where with Osha, and in Jedi Survivor, that Gara Diggin Gara, I guess I think his name is. You see him, just he comes out of the thing, switch, I'm done, I'm going. Until kind of the orange-ish, but still like another creamsicle lightsaber, but still, yeah, it was a great point. Another thing I'm wondering, do we know when that lore, I mean, I know we first hear about it with Southern Ontario Z.K. Johnston's Ahsoka novel, that whole lore about bleeding crystals, and then because it's talked about cleansing crystals, do we know maybe that it sounds like a George Lucas kind of thing? I don't know.
Back in Legends, they just had synthetic crystals that the Sith made. So
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me if the idea came from George. It also wouldn't surprise me if it was something that Filoni and the story group people kind of evolved, and then E.K. Johnston kind of solidified into the story. But it wouldn't surprise me. I think George. The whole thing with the crystals, I think, is one of those things I think George always kind of wanted to put in the movies, but never found a place. Like you go back to Splinter in the Mind's Eye, and like the Kyber crystal is a big part of that. And then he continued to evolve it and continued to play with it. And I think there was a lot of things that George considered and probably wrote into his own backstories that never really wound up making it to the screen, or if they did, it was in small ways, like in the Clone Wars, but it was never in the movies. One example of that might be midichlorians, and the response to that might show why he was hesitant to get some of these other weirder ideas in there. But I'm pretty sure, and Joel, you might know this and correct me if I'm wrong, if you go back into George's notes, like there's reference to midichlorians like fairly early on.
Well, the wills are OG stuff. So
Yeah.
you got that, and I do remember. I'm gonna try to wrap this up so we don't go on too much of a tangent. Oh, this is fun. There was like one idea where like lightsaber colors would change depending on like who's holding it. So like if like Darth Vader like hot potatoed accidentally turned off his lightsaber and hot potatoed it to Luke would turn it on. It's like blue now because like Luke's a good guy. So like the good guy energy would like be showing, and then it's like
sounds like it.
Went back to Vader, it's like back to red. So it's like womp 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 womp. So that was, and you see that in Ninth Jedi, that Star Wars Visions, where all those lightsabers just turned red when the bad guys held them. So that's an old idea. So yeah, there was a lot of stuff in the old days.
Yeah. One last thing I'll say about it, I do have that little like this yay high toy of action figure of Anakin, and you put on the Vader, and he has the blue lightsaber, but you put on the Vader gear, and he makes the breathing noise that he when he first gets the mask and changes the lightsaber to red. So it's a smaller version of it, but it's one of my favorite things. One of my favorite pieces of memorabilia from my favorite film of all time. Joel, I'll turn this to you. What was your week in Star Wars?
Well, my week of Star Wars, I got like one big thing. My mini thing is my dad got me a little book called Star Wars Philosophy. Very cute. Just kind of goes over the basic philosophical tenets of Star Wars and all the little things that we see. I think it's pretty up to date because it mentions Bad Batch, so it's actually pretty up to date in terms of like a book, which was cool. So that's cute. But my big thing in Star Wars was something we talked about this week, and it's something we can probably talk about near the end of the show. Is like you brought up, Matthew, whether or not Skeleton Crew might be considered a future model for Star Wars streaming shows. And I've been thinking about this for a while because I don't disagree, but I also am not quite 100% sure because at the end of the day, my big thing is they gotta make streaming shows that also get subscriptions for Disney Plus to go up. So it's not just about numbers, although I do think numbers do matter. It's all about, are the subscribers going up for these Disney Plus shows? And that happened with Mando, obviously, although Mando's always going to be kind of a weird one because of the time of when it was made. So that's always kind of a lightning in the bottle moment. But in terms of the other ones, it's like, are these shows keeping subscriptions and are these shows getting new subscriptions? We're going to see with Daredevil. A lot of people are hopefully going to come in to see Daredevil because that's the big Marvel show that's also very adult and also it's the legacy of a very successful Netflix show. And Netflix still has #1 subscribers. Netflix is still king of the subscription wars of streaming. Like it's like Netflix, and then I think like somewhere lower it's Disney Plus. So I'm wondering if is Skeleton Crew those smaller scale stories kind of the model for Disney Plus moving forward, or is it something more of an Andor that's more adult? Because at the end of the day, it's the parents and people like us who are paying $139 a year. At least I do for Disney Plus, and I love Skeleton. We love Skeleton Crew, we love Andor, so we're kind of in the maybe minority of we'll watch it all regardless because we're those kind of people. But like regular general audiences may watch more of the Andor than the quote unquote the kids show. And I don't know. So again, as I said before, Matthew, it's gonna be we're not gonna really know until after Ahsoka season 2 what the true direction is because I think Ahsoka season 2 is very much a special case of this is a Filoni pet project and he's our CCO, COO, whatever. So he's kind of he's a special case, but anybody outside of a man named Dave Filoni or John Favreau, they're going to probably have a little bit more of a thought of what kind of show do we want to put on Disney Plus that we think will be successful and give us more subscribers. So that's kind of my thought as I've sort of thought about last week.
I mean, I just want to clarify. It's a good point, and it still holds up, even though kind of my point wasn't so much in terms of it being a more kid-friendly show. I think what my point was saying is a bit of a smaller scale show that doesn't necessarily tie into a bigger thing, and so kind of these kind of one-offs. But then it could maybe to your point about getting subscriptions, it could go in both directions of both extremes, right? Mandoverse or Mandalorian is kind of in this middle where it does tie in and it does make its own thing to tie into itself. You know what I mean? In terms of the 3 seasons and Ahsoka and Book of Boba Fett, etc. And what Rangers was going to be, which kind of tied into Ahsoka a little bit. Whereas, of course, Skeleton Crew and Andor are, well, Andor season 1 is a bit on its own. Skeleton Crew, maybe this is my point, is what I'm getting at, is Skeleton Crew on its own smaller thing, and Andor more explicitly tied in, like Kenobi. Ahsoka to some extent, but especially Kenobi. and Andor, especially Andor, tying in to the saga films, and of course Rogue
And
One.
Rogue One.
Yeah, and Rogue One, which is so close to a saga adjacent. So,
Oh yeah.
maybe those two directions, because I mean, I can see. Maybe I'll put it this way: a show like Andor will get folks in to say, okay, kind of like we say with comics and novels, right? You like this character in this film, you saw this film because Star Wars is primarily a film franchise. Now learn more about how this person got to where they are.
Just like with Wednesday. Hey, what's happening
Yeah,
Wednesday? Kylo Ren comic. Hello.
exactly. Or and lots of different
Oh yeah.
different comics and whatnot. I mean, even
Vader every
Battles of Jakku,
year. Vader.
but also, or even everything with High Republic with Fernestra, just in case, just say an acolyte character, like an acolyte fan, one of that. But also, then another thing we say about paper canon is taking the opportunity to just do these almost not quite thought experiments, but or character sketches, or just say, go creative, go nuts, make a scenario that maybe doesn't have to be so dependent on everything else, and just explore and have the freedom to explore. That might keep subscribers. So and just again show the value of this platform as its own thing. So maybe, and especially, I mean, we'll get on, but my description, you just write a good story,
Well,
that too.
that helps.
I don't know, Dom, if you have any thoughts on those thoughts.
I do, but I've been researching where the first ever mention of midichlorians was in the last few minutes, and
All right.
apparently, allegedly, George did talk about them all the way back in 1977, in an interview that he did with somebody who worked for Lucasfilm at the time, Carol Titleman, and this quote is included in the making of Star Wars book that J.W.
Ooh.
Rinsler released about back in 2007. And
Message me
apparently,
that quote off air, and so I can post it somewhere.
I'll read it to you real quick here, and then I'll send it to you. But George apparently said, "The Force gives you the power to have extraordinary perception, to be able to see things and hear things, read minds and levitate things. It's said that certain creatures are born with a higher awareness of the Force than humans. Their brains are different. They have more midichlorians in their cells. And these midichlorians is MIDI-CHL oriens." So a little bit of a different spelling, but like these, it was kicking around in his brain for all this time. He just decided to bring it to the screen in Phantom Menace.
Yep, the idea is there. Yeah, and then any thoughts on the Skeleton Crew? I mean, we'll talk about this, picking this up at the end, but Skeleton Crew and Andor as the two divergent funnels to bring dollars and eyeballs.
Yeah, I think they just sort of, each of them shows that you can do more with the Star Wars saga, with the Star Wars universe. Like it doesn't have to just be, people have sort of very specific ideas of what a Star Wars story should be, or a Star Wars movie should be. But I think these two shows show like how you can use the universe in different ways. Andor like took out a lot of the like classic Star Warsy things and just kind of did these really intense stories within the Star Wars universe. So like there were stormtroopers in the Empire and all that stuff, but there wasn't Jedi and lightsabers and Wookiees and all that stuff. And then Skeleton Crew did like a different version of that, where again they took out a lot of the familiar things, but they did something that was very true to the spirit of Star Wars. So they just sort of show the different ways that you can tap into what is there.
I mean, in a way of saying, Andor is standalone in its in its kind of style and concerns and content. In a way, obviously not. The political argument is there. Star Wars has always been there. But in terms of the themes and the fun fantasy adventure, Skeleton Crew is very tied in that way, or very similar, of a piece.
I guess, Don, what we're trying to get at is, what do you think Lucasfilm or Disney, whoever approves any of this stuff, What do you think they're looking at post Ahsoka season 2 in terms of like, okay, this is the direction we're gonna take the streaming stuff moving forward, and now especially now that we have kind of movies back on our menu, boys, to go Lord of the Rings. I got myself there, but
Yeah, I think the movies are going to go into the direction of being a little bit more anything can happen. They're going to be the place where they go they experiment a little bit more. I think you look at the concepts for the 3 movies that we know of, I guess 4 movies that are officially announced, like Mando Grogu. We don't know much about it, but the sense I get is it's going to be wild and crazy and a rip roaring bit of fun. The Mangold movie is going to just remove us entirely from what we know about. The Ray movie is kind of, it seems like it might be setting up a new era, and then the Filoni movie, I think that's going to be the closest thing to a classic Star Wars movie. That'll be a sort of a grand epic adventure, which is pretty cool. Who knows what Sean Levy's movie is other than Ryan Gosling's in it. So I think that's where you'll start to see more varied stories in the movies. And with the shows, I think the goal is going to be to make them into really big events. They're going to be things that are sort of can't miss, because they've decided, it seems, that they don't want to saturate the market with shows and just do sort of, smaller scale Skeleton Crew-esque stories for whatever reason. They want something that's going to bring in a big, massive audience. And the show that did that the best, I think, other than Mandalorian being kind of the first one, was Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I think we'll start to see shows that are more that sort of thing, where it's something that's hotly anticipated, kind of out there, kind of crazy. And unfortunately, for as much as we just discussed Andor and Skeleton Crew, those are the sort of shows that won't be made so much. That may mean that we get stuff that's, perhaps movie-wise, you'll get something that's sort of Andor-like, in the sense that maybe they'll do like a spy show or a political thriller within the Empire, but it'll be a movie instead. It'll be more Mission Impossible and less House of Cards sort of thing.
Interesting. I'll just say, it's kind of funny you mentioned that, because one of the rumors, which I kind of don't buy because I hear this rumor every goddamn year. It's one of those rumors, but it's from a person also I kind of don't trust. But one of the big rumors is Knights of the Old Republic show, which once again, it's one of those rumors that I feel like I hear every year. I can just put on my bingo card of like Star Wars for that year. But I don't know. That to me seems like a big can't miss event with like almost a saga in itself, especially if you play the game. I kind of doubt that, but hey, I love Kenobi, and if Kenobi just had better graphics, better special effects, maybe it did look a little too cheap. I don't know. I would be happy with that. So I love the story.
Yeah, I think Knights of the Old Republic, if when that eventually comes around, and I've been wondering about that as well. Yeah. I spent a decent amount of time of my latest post on Substack about speculating how they could handle a Knights of the Old Republic story. I do think that's movies though. Mm-hmm. Like, you want to do something. This is the sort of the what's the word? Like, this is why it's sort of ironic and doesn't really make sense. It's like they want like the big event of Kenobi, but they don't want to pay the price of the Acolyte. And so when you want to do something that's like fully big and fully grand on that like truly epic scale, I think you have to go movie, because you can do the $250 million budget on a movie and then make $1 to $2 billion back if it's if it's that good, if you want to boil this down to the cold hard economics. So I think Knights of the Old Republic as a show, people think, oh, that sounds exciting, because they think of like Game of Thrones and that sort of thing. And that does sound exciting. Like, if you just said Game of Thrones, but Star Wars, that's pretty interesting. But for, Game of Thrones is a very expensive show to make. And for whatever reason, they have decided, Disney has decided that at least this is what my perception of it is, that they don't want to do that on the streaming side of things, or they don't want to do that as often. So they would rather, just do a Star Wars thing here and there that they can make into an event because they bring back a big actor. Maybe, if they were given a mulligan, maybe they would do Solo as a show. And the Han Solo show might get a little bit more attention than the Han Solo movie, especially if it was released at a different time, not so soon after. We had just seen Han Solo in The Force Awakens. Perhaps that might have been more the sort of thing, which is why it's interesting to me that the Lando project has become a movie, because that to me feels like that would be like sort of an event show. A lot of the sets that they would need, they at the very least know how to make them already, because it would be a lot of Lando type things that are extensions of what was done in Solo. And you'd have Donald Glover as a big star kind of come in and be a part of it, and that feels like it could be the next Obi-Wan Kenobi. But when they got the Glovers on board to write it, they seem to have shifted that towards a movie. So
okay.
We'll see.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what they announce. Well, one day. I don't expect it in celebration after Ahsoka season 2's guns run.
Yeah, it's interesting you say event, and my mind goes to the Scotiabank Theater event, and that's the only thing that Kenobi's the only kind of show I think that would make sense for that. You had Deborah Chow and Hayden Christensen there, and I know that's not really literally what you mean by event, but to be able for it to come together and have this kind of celebration, that energy, that vibe, that buzz for a show.
Like think about like other event shows, like the shows that people like tune in for. I'm thinking like The Last of Us sort of things.
Yeah,
like where it feels like everybody is watching it, and there have been attempts at shows like that recently with like Dune, or with the Dune Prophecy show, or the Penguin, that sort of thing, and they don't seem to catch on. And because I think they're viewed as spin-offs of the main thing. And so if the main thing is going to be movies, you have to really think big for the spin-off, the show, to be an event. And that's why Obi-Wan Kenobi satisfies that, because you're bringing back two classic actors and another classic character with Princess Leia. And I think, again, if the Lando movie were still a show, that could probably do it. But you gotta there's a sweet spot to find of like, this feels important, this feels big, this feels like it will grab people's attention, because they're seemingly moving away from just, hey, there's another Star Wars show on, hey, there's another Star Wars show on, hey, there's another Star Wars show on, which is what they were doing for the last few years. And that's why we were able to get interesting sort of side things like Andor and Skeleton Crew.
Ask our buddy Din what he thinks about all that saturation.
There's
a lot.
Yeah, there's certainly there's definitely an argument to be made that like it's better to have these things be events. Like think about how much fun just all the sequel trilogy movies were. All of those like events of like getting ready for it and being anticipated for it. But the one that was the most fun was The Force Awakens, because it was 10 years away. From the last Star Wars movie. And I sort of think like, oh, could Mando Grogu capture that a little bit, because it'll have been 7 years away, and maybe it will. But Star Wars has been like ever present for us, and not in the same way that it was with the Clone Wars between Revenge of the Sith and The Force Awakens. It's been like there's been a Star Wars movie released over 8 weeks 2 or 3 times a year. So it's become very just sort of like ever present. And I think the goal is to make it into that event so that people go out for it, they go big. And that there's a reason why the first 3 of the new Star Wars movies were the sort of the most popular, because they still felt like new events, and they had things about them that felt like big event things. So it was a return with The Force Awakens. It was first spinoff with Rogue One, and Last Jedi was still kind of cashing in on the return with the Luke element because Luke hadn't been in there. Solo didn't have that. It was also released at a weird time. It was also coming off the backlash of The Last Jedi, which I do think factored into it. And so
I'm more skeptical than you, Dominic, but about that one, especially because Rise of Skywalker still makes $1 billion.
Well, Rise of Skywalker makes $1 billion, but it's a year and a half later. It's a year and a half later. Like I don't think that's the main part of it. But I think it factored into it. Like it, sort of a death by 1,000 cuts with Solo. I don't think there's any one thing, the release date maybe being the biggest one, but I think there's a bunch of smaller factors that all together led to its situation. And then Rise of Skywalker, yes, it made $1 billion, but it was that was down significantly from the first two movies in the trilogy, and it was only matching the spin-off that was sort of unknown. So I think you got to bring back the eventness. So one movie a year and a spectacular show every 2 or 3 years.
I can see that for sure. We'd have to keep the ball rolling here. Just get some comments here. Wolf Dog. Skywalker's got a good. Speaking of Andor, and speaking of events, when are we getting this trailer? I mean, we've gotten a lot of little bit of spots and things like that. But yeah, what do we think? When are we getting this Andor trailer?
I posted on the Star Wars Underworld Discord a couple days ago how many days out trailers were for every show, and the disparity is fascinating. So with Skeleton Crew, you had 116 days out when its first from the release when its first trailer dropped. Acolyte was 77 days. Ahsoka with 138 days. Mando season 3 with 172 days. Andor season 1 was 97 to 118 days. There's apparently like a side note here somewhere. Kenobi was 77 days. Boba Fett was 58 days before its first trailer. Mando season 2 was 45 days, and Mandalorian season 1 was 82 days. Right. So as you can tell, they're not consistent with how close between air and first trailer. Acolyte and Ahsoka and Skeleton Crew seem to have the longest distance when their trailers first came out, while Mando season 2, which I would argue is probably the most successful of these shows outside Kenobi, had only 45 days out when its first trailer came out. So we're very much in the ballpark right now of it can happen anytime.
We're about 90 days out now, right? So something like that. So a little
more or less. Yeah.
Yeah, that was going to be my question, was how far out are we? I know
April 22nd.
Yeah, so it's it's got to be.
And they're gearing up for Daredevil too, so we got.
Yeah, so look, would it surprise me if it's this month? No. Would it surprise me if it's next month? No. Like you said, Joel, like it's a little bit all over the place, but I think Andor. I think there's going to be a big push for Andor because the first season was so acclaimed that probably a lot of people have heard about it in the time since then. It might also tap into a feeling that people have in the culture right now, and so there might be an effort to get some of that going for it. But the risk with that is that you run the possibility of getting backlash from that. So they're
going to get backlash anyway, but
but they might sort of play it a little bit safer with it for that reason. So it'll come when it comes. I think at this point, like it, we know when it's going to happen. We've seen little snippets here and there in Disney big picture things, but
and magazines, lots of magazines.
Yeah, so the word is starting to get out about it.
Yeah.
As long as everybody knows up for April 22nd, then great.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to show it at Celebration. You got to believe
that feels. I mean, you look at the track record. Celebration 2 years ago, they debuted a Mando episode a couple days early. Celebration 3 years ago, they did the Kenobi premiere there. So like the first time anybody outside of Lucasfilm had seen it was there, and that only wound up being like 5 hours before.
It was less. It was No, it was like they went just as it ended, then they hit go. I think.
Oh, even better.
Like, well, I was leaving the arena.
So Celebration is the 18th to the 20th. The show drops on the 22nd. So
Yeah.
whatever episodes are going to drop on the 22nd, expect them to drop. Expect those of us who are going might get an opportunity to see them a couple
I'm
days
fairly
earlier.
confident you're going to see it. Yeah.
I hope.
Yeah.
Hope so. I'd love to.
It'd be weird. I'd be surprised if they don't. Anyway, I was gonna do my week in Star Wars. I said there are Oscar nominations and film literacy. Just just thinking about how being I'm watching. I've seen more Oscar nominated best picture films this year than I ever have in my entire life, and reflecting on the way George Lucas taught me to watch film, and Dave Filoni, Dom, we were talking about before, just the way learning about 3-act structure, and Ryan Johnson teaching me how about messing with 3-act structure and things like that a little bit.
Chris Nolan did it before he did.
Sure, but
Dark Knight's like 5-act structure.
Yeah, but really having the mind to look at it and to think about those things, and thinking about point of view and perspective, and how especially Honora and the Brutalists are incredibly disciplined when it comes to point of view and what characters know and experience. I mean, and so you think about Ahsoka as this teenage girl coming into this war, her perspective, and Ezra later on, what his perspective is on the galaxy. And so that was just a thought. I know we've gone long, so we're gonna kind of move on. If you guys have any very quick thoughts on all that.
Well, I'll just say this. George has said like the point of Star Wars is to get off your uncle's moisture farm and go out and see the galaxy. And I think if we gave George a little truth serum, for as much money as Star Wars fans have given him over the years, I think there's a part of him that thinks like, no, go do more. Don't just watch Star Wars over and over again. Get out there and do more things. And a smaller version of that is watch other things, watch other movies. Watching other movies, like, it gives you a better understanding of what Star Wars is, of what the Star Wars shows and movies are trying to say, how they're being told, all of that stuff. I think it enhances our ability to talk about them. And when I say go see other things, I don't just mean go see Marvel and DC movies. Like, there's like so much more out there. You get so much of a better sense of what the galaxy is, or of what movies and storytelling are. And when Ryan Johnson was making The Last Jedi, he sat down the entire crew and showed them a bunch of movies, and not a single one of them was a Star Wars movie. Not a single one of them was a superhero movie. Like, the places that Star Wars draws its inspiration from, yes, there is like the Flash Gordon, and that is a huge part of it. That is a big part of it, and cannot be understated. So like the pulpiness of this stuff, I'm not dissing Star Wars movies or superhero movies or anything like that. That is a big part of the recipe. But George watched all kinds of movies. He loved experimental movies. Like all of that stuff factors into the stories that he told and the way he told them. So, going out and the Oscars list, like the best picture list, like that's a great starting point to go out there and just see more and explore more and understand more. And, and then read about them and watch videos about them and understand it in a deeper way. And again, go beyond just the superhero movies and the blockbusters. Yes, there's good stuff to be found there, but when you're watching, like, sometimes okay, we're gonna get into this. Sometimes when I'm watching like video essays and stuff on YouTube about like a recent blockbuster movie, and the person is only referencing other blockbuster movies from like the last 10 years, I'm like, I don't know if this person actually has anything to say.
Right.
I don't know if there's anything really here, because your point of view, your vision is so narrow, and widening it and allows you to understand and appreciate things in new and different ways. And that's not just limited to Star Wars movies and shows. It's the same thing with books. Don't just read Star Wars books, read other books too, fiction, nonfiction, and you get this like bigger, broader perspective that makes it more fun and more engaging. More interesting.
Yeah, I mean, just reflecting on when I come home from seeing Honora or The Brutalist, I was saying I was challenged by the way those stories are told, because the thing with these big blockbusters often do is that they make it simpler and more palatable most of the time. Whereas, yeah, Honora and The Brutal, they're just kind of jerky and janky and whatever, because that's what the characters are experiencing. So, I mean, I know, a good blockbuster can still be challenging that way too, but uh, yeah, just reflecting on how, yeah, like you're saying, how meaningful to be exposed to the heights of the art form that it can be, and not necessarily the Oscars don't necessarily represent that, but yeah, like you said, a good place to start. So um, all right, we do need to move on very quickly. One big news story, um, talked about how Knights of the Old Republic, my mind goes to Publishing Initiative, is one of the places that era is likely going to go. Possibly seems likely. But before that, High Republic has to end. And so, on that note, we have the Trials of the Jedi, the cover and description. Yes, at the end of the High Republic is nigh. This, of course, Trials of the Jedi novel comes out June 17th, 2025. And yeah, like I mentioned, the cover and the cover and the description were revealed on Charles Soule's newsletter. At least the cover was on Charles Soule's newsletter. I'll pop that up right here. This is the art by Grant Griffin. This is just half of the cover. I don't think we've seen the other half of the cover. It's kind of a wraparound, because we only see 4 Jedi there. So that I'm gonna read the long donkey description. There we go. I'm gonna read it all, and then we'll chat briefly about it. In this epic conclusion to Star Wars: The High Republic, the Jedi face a final confrontation against the Nihil and Markian Ro. The Force is everything, a single life connected to all life, all things connected to all other things. This is what the Jedi believe, and this is why they fight for life and light. This is from the Penguin website. You got to credit that. For too long, the light has been threatened by Markian Ro, a sinister despot who will stop at nothing in his quest for power. The conflict with Ro and his marauding Nihil forces has left scars across the galaxy and held the Republic hostage. Countless lives have been lost, beacons of hope have fallen, and the collective courage and resolve of the Republic has been tested like never before. Through it all, the Jedi Order has endured, an unwavering candle against the encroaching darkness. But the Jedi have yet to solve the mystery of the nameless creatures who feed on the Force. Ro has loosed them upon the galaxy, striking fear into the heart of even the most stalwart Jedi. And yet, with every life saved and the world freed from Nihil control, the all-consuming blight, which devours everything wherever it appears, threatens to wipe it all away. Everything now depends on 9 brave Jedi, led by Avar Kriss and Elzar Mann, who embark on a treacherous journey to the Nameless homeworld. Their quest? To finally solve the mystery of the Nameless and their connection to the Force, and to stop the blight before its damage becomes irreversible. But a final confrontation with Markian Ro awaits. Ro, who is willing to sacrifice everything he's achieved to secure a final victory against the Jedi and carve his name into the very stars for all time. Nothing less than the fate of everything, perhaps even the Force itself, is at stake. Oh my word. This tells us a whole lot, and also not much. I mean, not much plot details, which is great. It's what you want, really setting this up. The first thought I have is this is the High Republic at its most Camelot. It is most, you see this image here, most Arthurian. That's was one of Charles's original inspirations for this whole initiative, bringing it all the way to the fore here. Yeah, you see Ivar and Elzar, and of course Buri and Bell in there. I'm trying to see if there's can't see if there's anyone else. Is that
High
no,
York.
yeah, that's High York in there. Okay, yeah, it's hard to see on the screen. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, this Knights of the Round Table, these 9. I guess Ty is back to being a knight. That's great. The, going on this quest, and it also that makes me think it's going to be the 9 main characters of all these different ways, different young adult novels and the adult novels and different comics, and the Dark Horse comic and the Marvel comic and the IDW comic, but all these things that they've plotted through leading up to this one final quest, and it continues to impress me the way they have thought that they knew that this was going to be the premise of the final novel 4 or 5 years ago, 6 years ago. They knew that already, and so they've just been building everything up. My guy Reith, he's got to be in there. They'll be shocked if he isn't. So that getting me excited for that again, June 17th, 2025, when this all ends. There's a lot of story to get through until then. I mean, there's quite a bit of story. I mean, there's the Fear of the Jedi comic. There's a whole other YA novel coming out. There's another young reader novel coming out just around the corner, and so they have some things to do. Kind of figuring out Bit of the Blight. A major moment came recently with the Rod of Ages, which I won't get into too much, but yeah, just a lot to go, but then clearly, yeah, having that focus that they're gonna go back to Planet X. And if you read Tears of the Nameless, especially, you know what that's all about. So I'm excited. This is what a great description. Really cool art, similar style, I think, to the Phase 2 novels, I want to say. Or maybe, yeah, I think that's right. But also the white, just like Light of the Jedi, kind of the white background there. So Dom, you wrote about this in your Substack. You're more or less caught up, especially at least on the novels. What do you think of of this description and the cover?
I mean, the cover is gorgeous. It's very colorful. That's something that I think you mentioned the Phase 2 novel covers, like they really popped and they had a lot of color to them. Whereas the Phase 1 and Phase 3 books, there's been like through Phase 1 they start off light and they get darker as they go, and Phase 3 starts off very dark with the Eye of Darkness. That's what I called. The first Phase 3 novel, and then um Temptation of the Force is a little lighter, and then this one is like popping colors at you. One thing that I've seen pointed out is that it's a sort of updated version of the roster of characters that's on the cover of Light of the Jedi. Avar and Elzar being there, and Buryaga sort of carrying over, but then you have Bell standing in for Loden, and Ty in for Stellan. So you kind of have the next generation taking over with the current generation. Is pretty cool. But it makes sense that, like, of course, all of this is headed to Planet X. Of course, that's where all this is headed. So I'm very interested and very excited. The way things were left off in Tempest Breaker, with Mark Yonro being a little bit exposed as the charlatan that he is, I think puts him kind of in an interesting place to for where he will be in the final books of this phase of this story. Is he kind of, does he lose his luster? Now the Jedi are just trying to stop what he's unleashed because he can't control it, despite what he said, or is he having been embarrassed, like just fully out for revenge and wanting to prove just how dangerous and intimidating he can be? I'm very intrigued. Then I'm very intrigued to see how all of it kind of brings everything together. So I'm a little behind on the comics. I don't think I've read any of the December or January books, but I need to get caught up because we're about to have a whole bunch of interesting things go down during the next 6 months as we wind down the High Republic publishing initiative.
Yeah, 6 months. Yeah, I guess it's like 4 or 5 months coming up. The next half year. Yeah, it's true, and we're just around the corner. Yeah, definitely. Again, it's interesting, like you mentioned, with the roster of characters. Yeah, how things have changed as well, right? So I talked about how they seeded things through. They've gone through a whole bunch, and they've discovered a whole bunch about themselves, about what who the Jedi are. Yeah, that Markian with the crack in his kind of character armor, if you will. That's a huge moment in Tempest Breaker, which we'll get to on Wednesday. That is he going to be the wounded dog who just the rabid cur? who just wants to bite and chew or claw. Maybe he is going to be, kind of off in the corner. I don't know. I mean, it does say he wants to write his name in the stars, carve his name in the stars. How violent is that carve going to be? So, good question. Joel, hearing this description, kind of as you are getting up to pace a bit with the High Republic, and having listened to Tempest Breaker especially, what strikes you about this cover? What strikes you about the description?
Oh yeah, very lovely cover. I think a lot of the cover is very lovely. I guess Charles Soule's got his work cut out for him to end a 19+ book series that hasn't seen something like that since Unifying Force in 2003, written by James Luceno, the master. So lots riding on this man. And I'm kind of thinking, how much gets resolved, how much kind of you can leave open. I mean, I think you have to kind of wrap up kind of the Nile and Marcion row, because those are the big things that you can't have around anymore. Maybe certain character arcs, certain characters you can kind of like leave open if you want to kind of do more of those one and done things that we've been talking about, Matthew. The High Republic as an era now, not as a big saga thing. And I guess, how is Marcion going to get defeated? That's kind of, because ultimately he has to some extent. He's not around to see the Empire, that we know of. But Star Wars does, how does he get defeated? Does he die? Does he have a last minute change of heart? Kind of doubt that. I hope not. Need to set that up better. Does he destroy himself literally? Right? Star Wars doesn't really have its heroes for the most part, with maybe a couple exceptions, like just go and now, it's like either with the Emperor, Vader does the killing blow, and the Emperor does it himself, and Rise of Skywalker, or Snoke dies by Kylo's hand, and when Anakin kills Dooku, it's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. Closest size to a hero killing a villain is Grievous, although I guess Grievous is half droid monster, so it's okay. But when it comes to like the big characters, it's like what I can't see, like maybe what is Avar just gonna like, and now die Marcion Rowe, or is it gonna be one of those more satisfying Marcion kind of kills himself? If he dies, of course, he might live and just go to heavy prison. It's 50-50. But that's kind of my thoughts on it. But yeah. How do you end this is the big question, and I'm very curious to see. And also, like I always say, what kind of note are we going to end on? Are we going to end on a Phantom Menace like, we did it, yay? Or are we going to end on a kind of more of a sober note? That too, as we've talked about. And one more thing, and then we can move on.
Sure.
Small hope, small epilogue hope. Kind of doubt it, but maybe not, because this is Charles Soule. Kind of want like an epilogue of like just two Sith like from a cave, like, dang, all that Nile stuff really happened. Maybe we should take advantage of that.
Yes, I've been wanting that from like the very beginning. You can go back and watch the Force Fest panel that Chris Appin and I did, and in it I said I hope that like at some point, maybe at the end of the series, we'd get a little look in with the Sith and what they thought of all of this. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if the note that we end on is, hey, we did it, but at what cost? Because as I think we've talked about over the years, like this is the Jedi starting to lose their way. This is kind of the beginning of the end for the Jedi Order. And there could be a feeling of huzzah, we're free. But what happens next? Yeah, which is the note that Phantom Menace does end on, right? It's, yay, we did it. Oh, wait a minute. Always two there are. Hold on.
And then parade, but Stem, like, I agree. I kind of want the cave moment, or just like, geez, Darth Tenebrous, that was a lot of weird stuff with that Marcion Rogue guys. Yes, Darth.
And if anyone can do that, if anyone probably has the freedom and the insight and the ability to write that, it's Charles
I didn't, Joel. I didn't realize you were doing like the hand talking thing. I thought you were doing like a twirling mustache.
No, I'm doing the hand puppets. They're hand puppets.
Hand
No, I'm
puppets.
kidding. I'm
There we
kidding.
go.
Well, Darth Tenebris, we certainly have our work cut out for us. Or my name isn't Darth Stash.
Yes. Change your name.
There we go.
Okay, how about please?
So, I mean, similar note to In the Living Force, right? At the end of that novel. So, with a certain Darth Sidious in there, but definitely I can see that again. even just had the question of how Markion ends, or what is end here in this, whatever that looks like. I mean, it's the thing. Yeah, sure, we haven't seen that thing that happen on screen. Doesn't mean it can't happen. Doesn't mean Eve can't go and screw this, gets him, or Avar, or somebody. And for reflection, what that means for Keeve's character, because I think Keeve is one of the folks on the other side of this thing, the cover. What it means if Avar is the one who does it, or who knows, what does that mean for the Jedi, right? Like you're saying, Dom, with the beginning of the end. So, their willingness to, I mean, this battle hardened willingness, and that's the thing, is that this skirmish, this war, whatever you want to call it, it isn't as big as the Clone Wars. It can't possibly be.
You still have
But
200 years of decline. That's
Sure,
still a long
but
time.
sure, and it could be Vernestra. I mean, that's the thing. After seeing her in the Acolyte, Charles goes, "Oh, let's do that or something," because that would be kind of consistent with her not, not, and it's not so much being angry or vicious, just being cold and decisive in that way. And what that means again for the Jedi that we see even 100 years later, if not 200 years.
So there's supposed to be 9 Jedi on this adventure, right? So we have Avar, Elzar, Buri, Bell, and Ty. There's 5.
Yeah.
Presumably Vern, Reith, and Eve. That brings us to 8. Who's 9? Yoda? Comac?
Maybe someone from
Ariel.
Farzala, someone from the, because we haven't, someone from the Dark Horse.
Oh yeah, one of the kids. Yeah,
Karnak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Comac. Buckets of blood.
Yeah, no, one of the kids. Farzala.
Yeah. Quart. Could have Quart.
Quarter Farzala. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's probably Farzala. That makes more sense.
Yeah.
I will say, if I can't get a Sith epilogue, I think we deserve at least a Yoda epilogue. I think Yoda needs to be the thing that ties in Skywalker Saga Land with High Republic Land, and then kind of
Yoda might be the one who says, "What have we done? What have we
done? What have we?" Just like Phantom Menace, right? He's the one who says always two there are. Right?
Become what have we?
Yeah. So, yeah. Here we go. I'm loving it. High Republic. What can we say?
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
There we go. All right. I think we're over an hour in. Let's get finally to our main topic.
Man the Ion Cannons.
Man the Ion Cannon. Gotta get to the way. Shiver me, Space Timbers. There we go.
Jorg. We not be humble pirates. Yes, Skeleton Crew. Oh man, that was a fun one, guys, and I'm glad we're finally here to talk about it in perpetuity, in its whole now. And I think we should begin with this one question. Mr. Dominic Jones, give us a cold take on Skeleton Crew.
I was trying to think about this, like what could there be that's a cold take, because there really wasn't much. There wasn't much sort of in the way of like big speculation. We wondered how much it would tie in with the Mandoverse, and largely it the New Republic is there a little bit. Vane from season 3 of Mando is there, but really it's its own thing. It kind of stays off to the side, so that could be a cold take. The other cold take I could think of, and this was one of my own, was the theories about the supervisor. And sort of going into the finale, there were 2 sort of main ones. One that it was kind of a Wizard of Oz situation, which I think is more or less what happened with the Stephen Fry droid, and the other was that it would be Tak Renaud is alive as the supervisor, and that was one I really liked, and I spent a lot of time convincing Ben Hart in particular of it,
Poor Ben.
and ultimately it wound up not being the case. I will sort of defend myself and say, based on the evidence laid out in the 3 previous episode, or in the 7 episodes leading up to that,
Mhm.
you could make a very strong case that was the direction they were going. Ultimately, I think looking back, there was more evidence, more foreshadowing that led up to what actually happened, but it wasn't a theory that was based on what would we like to happen necessarily. It was more based on, like, let me try and follow these breadcrumbs, and instead I followed the wrong breadcrumbs and got stuck further in the maze. But like, I compare it to like Book of Boba, where we started this segment. The cold takes were things like, oh, Kira's gonna show up, or oh, Han's gonna show up, or things like that all of us wanted to happen, or a lot of us wanted to happen, and thought that would have been really cool. But there was never any like real evidence of it. We were grasping at straws with like, oh, the notes in the soundtrack are the same, or the guy's necklace kind of looks like the Crimson Dawn necklace.
The planet's connected to Palpatine's cloning, because that was a thing. That's
that one. That's a cold take. The Exegol thing.
Yeah. So like there's those sorts of cold takes are just sort of like people just grasping at straws.
Yeah.
Tak Renaud, I maintain that was a viable, real thing that could have happened, and that they did kind of leave us enough sort of fake breadcrumbs for it. But ultimately, it didn't happen. Therefore, ice cold take.
Yeah, I mean, it speaks to the strength of the concept and the strength of the show itself, that the actual concept just didn't lend itself to this kind of need for too much connection. And then that what they set up, they really paid off really strongly. So
no, I think this show very much is unique in that it's kind of, I personally think the term cameo has gotten a little bit abused by fans over years to insert same character I recognize, because I think there is I have a big kind of difference between like cameo and like integral to the story, even if it's a character we know. But yeah, this is sort of like there was no character we recognize. There was no, there was neither no need for it, and neither they didn't want to do it, right? Where it's like, you kind of expect Anakin to show up in something called Ahsoka. At least I do. There's a lot of reason to have him, and obviously the whole thing is the search for Thrawn and Ezra. So that story kind of needs those characters to be around. Mando season 2, that definitely is cameo land, but it's done so well I don't care. And then Book of Boba Fett's just kind of a mess. But yeah, I think that Skeleton Crew it operated on its own laurels, and it was just the strength of its own story. Not that I don't think Ahsoka is not strong on its own, or Mando season 2, but it's sort of like it was strong, and it didn't decide, we don't want to do that this time around. So that was nice. I guess I'll move on to the next point. What did Skeleton Crew add to the canon? Because I decided to make that one of our segments now. Because why not? This is what we're all here for. That's why we're called Ion Canon. I think I'll give my own takes first, and I'll pass it to Matthew this time. We saw very much a look at the wonderful world of pirates. I think that this show did a great job utilizing its era in the New Republic era, as officially called by Lucasfilm, to kind of have a show where I think if we did this show and say like the Dark Times, I don't think the tone would be as great, because I think you kind of, because I think, I'm not saying Kids versus the Empire wouldn't be fun, but I think it's one of those things where it's like, this is why we don't do a Young Jedi adventure show set in the Dark Times. I think you kind of have to take the Empire a little more seriously than, say, pirates. Pirates you can have a little more fun with, even though these pirates are still very dark. We look at this New Republic as the pirate. We can see a little bit of the New Republic in action. It's like the pirate takedowners. That was cool. I wonder if there's like a secret. I mean, you get to see like suburban life. It's really cool to see like kind of kids who get the privilege of being children actually exist, and to have that privilege of childhood, which is something a lot of people in Star Wars and in real life don't really get to have. And Star Wars Suburbia, which was nice, and also kind of see a planet that didn't didn't really know what was going on and kind of avoided the wars and the Empire and kind of lived in blissful ignorance, which I thought was very interesting. But Matthew, I'll toss this one to you this
Yeah.
time. What did you think that Skeleton Crew added to the canon?
I mean, kind of the obvious one, this idea of the great works, and or I mean, not added to it, continued it. I mean, this very High Republic resonance to say, yeah, that at some point in the Republic they made these isolated, closed off planets.
To make
And
money.
this is kind of, I guess, kind of the nerdy lore question, right? That we're kind of getting out of the way a little bit.
It's our
yeah,
show, which was called.
yeah, but I mean, it's an interesting concept. Right? These isolated planets, and one of them they try to make a mint that's cut off by this barrier, and had this whole thing where, a reminder of when the Jedi were that well respected throughout the galaxy, like we're talking about with the High Republic, right? That to see that on screen, to see that, even more so than the Acolyte, I think, to see by way of contrast. Just I'm talking about the very last episode where it can be this forget what the title is, ambassador, whatever it is,
Emissary.
yeah.
Think
Just to go
Cisco
with-
from DS9.
Yes, different kind of emissary there, maybe. You have to go in and kind of make a withdrawal for the Republic and not the New Republic. Maybe that's another thing. I don't know if this is so much adding to the canon, but my own perception, I always thought the phrase New Republic was weird, just because you don't call yourself the New Republic. Whoever calls themselves that, unless they really want to be like, say, we're not like the Old Republic or the New Republic. Maybe that's why. There's the New
Blame
Democratic
Tim's on.
Party. I think
Blame
we should
Tim's on
change
for
the
that
name.
one.
Yeah, but here it was really effective in making the contrast. Like, oh, cluing in, this is this weird isolated planet that's just developed this utopia, despite, well, not necessarily utopia, it's also a dystopia.
It's suburbia.
Suburban dystopia. It's very tightly controlled, but very comfortable and easy. That doesn't even know about the Order 66 and the Clone Wars and all that. So that, yeah, all those different little lore things. I do thinking going forward, where's all that money going to go to? Who's going to use that? Who's going to want their hands on it? Sure, the New Republic's going to want it. What's going to happen there? I do think we're going to get stories about that, fairly soon. That, I mean, maybe that's kind of bankrolling the First Order or something there. So that lore dump. Lastly, though, and I maybe to get back into the more kind of serious, not to disparage, talking, be nerdy and geeky conversation, but I talked about point of view with these Oscar films, and this one also very disciplined with its point of view. I mean, yeah, with Ahsoka's story in Clone Wars, Ezra and Rebels, here they go even younger, right? They're even younger, and they're even more ignorant of what's going on. Not in a bad way, just because they're kids. They're not fully able to, kids on an isolated planet. That experience of going with them and not knowing what the canon is was knowing and not knowing, but not knowing how this fits in it, was itself a very fascinating, different look at Star Wars, different way to do Star Wars. And so by way of it added, by way of contrast, it added this other experience of watching Star Wars.
Yeah, I'll add to that because you brought up a great point that just reminded me of something. I think one of the best examples of how this show uses point of view is, ironically enough, the New Republic itself. Because I think with Mandalorian and Ahsoka, they're adults. Their view on the New Republic is more nuanced, more cynical sometimes. It's
True.
not, it's not horrible, but it's also like, it's got problems. It doesn't act quickly. These kids aren't really going to get into the nitty gritty of what the New Republic government's doing. I don't think they care that much. But also, because of the ending, they see the X-Wings come in, and it's almost like what a kid thinks when they see an X-Wing. It's like, they're not thinking, did the Senate vote proper procedures? It's like, oh, heck yeah, look at these cool X-Wings. They're kicking butt and taking names. They're taking all these pirates out of our home. And, like, Wim had that kind of look of like, I want to be one of those guys up in the sky in my X-Wing one day. And I think that's very much point of view of these kids who, these are the real good guys. That's the New Republic. They are the X-Wing is the good guy. compared to Ahsoka and Mandalorian, where it's a little bit more complicated and cynical in that regard. So I think that's a great example of point of view. But Dominic, I'll throw this one to you. What did the show add to the canon to be nerdy? Get nerdy on us.
Yeah, it's I like what's so much adding, just of evolving, and I guess adding in the sense that it adds more, but it's not necessarily a new thing. But I've loved in the last sort of 10 years of Star Wars this whole idea that there are parts of the galaxy or whole other galaxies that are unknown and lost to us and to the main characters. And this kind of started with Force Awakens and Acto, and then Rebels picked it up with Lyrasan, the homeworld, the actual homeworld of the Lasat. Exegol is obviously a big part of that in Rise of Skywalker, and then Peridia in Ahsoka kind of gave us another version of this. Skeleton Crew, the version we get is one where it's intentional. Like all of those other ones are kind of lost by accident, right? Like the First Jedi Temple, the ancient homeworld of the Sith, those are kind of lost by accident. Peridia is meant to be hard to get to, like it's a whole other galaxy. Lyrasan lost kind of by accident. Whereas this one was hidden intentionally. And it does beg the question of what else is out there that we don't know about. And do we not know about it because nobody knows about it? It just hasn't been exposed to us yet. Do we not know about it because it's hiding intentionally? Or is there just more forgotten secrets out there that we don't yet know about? And to tie it in with the High Republic, I mean, Planet X and the Nameless and the threats around them. That's another big example of it. Even in Tears of the Nameless, what's the one where they go to the world with the statues and
Tears of the Nameless with the
big planet,
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and you can even sort of start to play with like the Zepho kind of gets into that as well with the you want to include the Jedi games. Like they're starting to explore this, and I don't think it's all one big grand plan building towards something, but I do wonder if there is a concerted effort to show that there are things in this galaxy we don't yet know about, and perhaps that could culminate in some sort of story down the line of the invasion Yuzon Vong sort of variety. Not necessarily that, but something that taps into a similar idea as the classic New Jedi Order.
Yeah, it's interesting. Star Wars has kind of been, whether you think fairly or unfairly, accused of a little bit of small galaxy syndrome, where everyone knows each other. Now I personally am always of the opinion of like, it's whatever story you want to tell, and if you do it good, I don't care. But people always say it's a big galaxy, and I think with those moments we are tapping a bit more into like, yeah, it is a big galaxy. It's not just the same 5 planets of Coruscant, Naboo, Tatooine, and Mustafar. I love going there all the time. It's like, yeah, you can't find lost civilizations, or it's like, yeah, I can believe that the Bad Batch was able to more or less kind of retire in peace and not have to deal with the Empire for most of its 25-year run. If you're far enough, you probably never see the Empire. I mean, I'm sure there were planets who never saw the Empire a day in their lives. It's a big galaxy. So I think you're right, Dominic. I think this is interesting. Like, no, this is more intentional. Like, yeah, there are lost and mysterious things. I think it just adds back a little bit of that wonder into the wider Star Wars mythos as we build upon it with all the new stories and whatnot. So yeah, I 100% agree with that.
Mm-hmm. And you say wonder, like that's something Skeleton Crew did just on like a thematic, emotional experience level of watching the show. Like the Star Wars galaxy felt grand and wonderful in a way that I don't know if it has recently. And that's not through any fault of any storytellers, just we've all become kind of used to it. And this, again, to go back to what you guys are talking about with perspective, this show is told from the point of view of a bunch of kids who have not been out in the galaxy, who have not seen Star Wars before. So much in the same way that when people talk about when they watch the Star Wars movies with their kids, they get a new appreciation for it. Watching the Star Wars universe from the point of view of these kids, I think gave us a new appreciation for it.
I agree. Although, I'll say at least for myself, I felt a little bit of that wonder come back with Ahsoka, only because I felt Ahsoka was
Mm.
like kind of tapping into like there's something really big and mystical out there with Peridia, which
I
I think is wonderful. Which I think is adds to that wonder.
I
But no,
wanted to feel that way with Ahsoka, but Peridia, there was nothing special about it. Like it could have
hope
just been any other planet, and if there had been, then I think I would have felt it.
I think
And
we'll see that in season 2.
I
I
hope
hope
so.
so.
And we do get like little doses of that wonder. Like the Purgil have always had that. Like going back to
I
that
love Purgle.
that first Rebels episode that they're in, they have that magic and that wonder to them. And in Ahsoka, they had the same thing. Like the moment at the end of Shadow Warrior, after all the Anakin stuff is done, when Ahsoka, reaches out to the Purgil to take them to Peridia, like that is a truly like wondrous moment of the Star Wars galaxy.
Yeah, and then stuff like Andor. Guy Donnie's pretty wonderful for
Yeah,
me. But
that's another one.
but that's just a small moment in a show that's like, oh shoot, this is the real world. Get us out of here.
Yeah.
So it's not a lot of wonder, but there's some of it.
Andor gives us those like little micro doses of the wonder with the Eye of Aldani or those weird troll things that keep saying "Moisey Moi" over and over again. That gives us those like little like snippets that remind you, like, yes, no, this is the same Star Wars galaxy. It's just how normally we just give you snippets of the really serious stuff. This show is all the serious stuff with just little snippets of the wonder.
Right.
It's flip places.
But no, I agree, and I think again it's just that child wonder of but also it reminds you of the dark. I actually do like the intro first scene of Skeleton Crew because I think that what it does brilliantly, and we kind of now get into the actual story, is I think what the first scene does of episode 1 is that it really establishes that I think, a lot of people went in, it's like, oh, it's a kid's show. Now, I wasn't saying that because I know 80s kids movies, and those things are dark and heck. You got kids smoking and swearing and seeing things they shouldn't be seeing. So I think that first scene, as as maybe too reminiscent of A New Hope as it gets, it definitely establishes like, no, we're still going to be violent, and these pirates are not to be messed with. And Jod is someone who's still kind of ruthless, so it's like, it's not, pirates, silly pirates. Like, no, these pirates are going to kill you if they will. And, we definitely will see that again in this back half. So I think, again, from that perspective, even though it is from the kid's perspective, it does at least start off with like, no, remember, dangerous galaxy, pirates will kill you. And I think it does it, and that's a really good job. Kind of the economics of the show, which I think is like so tight, so brilliantly written. But yeah, let's get into the kids. Let's get into our kid friends. I love these kids. I love them. They're great. Wim, Fern, KB, Neil, precious Neil, good boy. They're great. They got some brilliant kid actors behind them. They feel like real kids. They act like real kids. They get the privilege of being real kids in the Star Wars galaxy, which is something, again, we get a little bit in episode 4 where it's like, oh yeah, these kids don't really get with the planet, with that other planet. It's like, oh yeah, these kids don't get the privilege of being real children. I mean, of getting to have childhood. They have to deal with war and destruction. Or we get the nice suburban life, and so we get to act like kids and be like kids. And they're all just wonderful and great, and they come together as a team. They're, again, very Amblin. But Matthew, I'll toss this one to you. What do you think of these kid characters of our group, of our skeleton crew?
Yeah. I mean, first off, yeah, well, definitely really talented actors. They really brought it. I do, from what little I know about with child actors, it does need a good bit of coaching, a good director who knows how to bring stuff out of them. But I mean, especially, I think specifically, I forget which episode it was, but with KB when she's malfunctioning, and Wim has to go in
Episode
and
6.
yeah, and kind of manufacture a whole new rod or whatever. Just the Curiana Crater, bringing that. We'll get to her specifically, but bringing that depth and that emotion of, that's the thing is, yeah, these are experiences particular to kids, obviously not necessarily thrust into just this wild, dangerous situation, but the experience of growing up, we're reminded that those struggles are human struggles. We're reminded that just because, we haven't been that age in a few decades doesn't mean we're different from them in that, the things we experience and the things we just in living our lives and trying to move forward in life. And I mean, not everyone facing those kind of dangerous situations, but the fact that we were able to connect so well with them, uh, it speaks to the universality. I mean, the universality of Star Wars, like leaving the farm, the universality of stepping out into scary, different world. And I love especially the way how clearly they made this very clear right in front of our face that they started off, ew, these boys have cooties, these girls have cooties, and then going through and facing this, the parallel situation on that war planet, for example, that moment with Fern starting to break down, that she's not doesn't have all together because she's still a kid, and Wim being there to comfort her. Yeah, everything, Neil showing his strength throughout, and um, reminding Fern to, really look out for the more vulnerable. They started off boys versus girls. They really came together so strongly towards the end, that last moment where they're all working together. They're in different places physically, but they're all so strongly working together. It was so well earned and so well developed in that moment that we never questioned it, and rightly so, because they showed us, this is how they can come together. Again, speaking of the universality of it, this is how we can all transcend our divisions and actually come together by realizing we all need each other and rely on each other. And that's this beautiful theme of this show, that they just do such a great job of telling a story about that from the perspective of kids who are either tend to either be uh you know socialized to just replicate what their parents tell them in life. uh Wim is the only one who kind of doesn't do that, although they all end up not doing that a little bit, but kids just tend to go in the direction often the parents do, or challenge and question, and nudge the things in different ways to say, well, what if the world can be like this instead? And so, really, really beautifully told story about that.
Dom, thoughts on our kids as a group?
Honestly, I can't say anything more. You guys have kind of nailed it. It was really fun to have the leads of the story be that age, because it tapped into something that is, you know, essential to Star Wars, which is that it's a coming of age story. And we've gotten different variations of this over the years, but this was a new one. And to see, them come of age individually, but also come of age as a group together was really nice. And seeing the way they have to learn to be honest with each other, and but also rely on each other. And the people that seem like they have it all together often don't. And that when they work together, when they put their skills together, that's when they're able to accomplish the most. And that, we see that in the finale. It's maybe a little on the nose, but it's impactful nonetheless. Of each kid has a role, each kid has a thing to do, each kid had a lesson that they learned along the way, and a piece of information that they figured out that helps them, that individually wouldn't be enough, but altogether collectively is what saves the day.
Yeah, and one thing about this coming of age story I really liked in terms of variation, we were talking about, the George Lucas gotta leave the farm thing. Is that, and this is where maybe it differentiates from how George would have done it, of course, is I love the involvement of the parents, which is just something in general I've noticed in a lot of more coming of age stories these days, is that the parents don't get sidelined. They get to kind of be part of the adventure by the end, or in the mix of it. Where, it's like in A New Hope, it's
Mhm.
like yeah, Uncle Owen's not letting me do the thing, and then Uncle Owen's dead. It's like, I'm never going to talk about Uncle Owen and Amperu again, even though they raised me. I'm going to bye-bye. Here they get to come back and have an adventure with their parents, and the parents themselves kind of, there's almost like a meeting in the middle kind of a situation between the parents and the kids in the end, where it's like, they have to work together to stop the pirates. And even, parents learn themselves a lesson, right? Like, I love Wynn's dad, where he's like, he's kind of getting into it, kind of getting into the adventures, like, woo, I just did a thing I never did. I feel like I've defied death. Or like, son, I am a level 7 engineer. Let's go kick some butt. And then, Fern's mom kind of has to, kind of get out of her bubble and like realize I gotta pop the bubble. It's the only way. I gotta end the years of protection this planet's had. And she finally like takes the leap of faith and just like, you know what? Yeah, I gotta do this. Consequences later, be damned. KB's parents and Neil's parents don't get that much, but I love the little moment like, we believe in you, sweetie. KB, you can fix anything. And then we all think for a second KB's dead. I mean, I didn't, of course, because I don't think they would kill off a kid. But it's like, that moment was beautiful as well. So I really loved that moment, and I agree with you, Matthew. This show had a bit of that Star Wars universality. Which, again, from the perspective of a kid. And, again, I talked about this a little bit with episode 4, I think, where, it's a simplistic message, but it's a nice one. Like, I don't completely, like, in the real world, Neil's not 100% correct about, like, why don't the two sides just hug and then everything get back together? That'd be like the equivalent, like, maybe we just need to give Mr. Palpatine a hug and then he'll be nice. That's obviously not going to happen.
I mean, did anybody try?
That's
maybe
true.
we just tried.
Maybe, maybe.
Shiiiiver, bring it in, bud, bring it in.
Yeah, but you know what I mean, right? Where it's like, the evil genocidal empire is not going to just be hugged away, or it's a bit more complicated than that. But the show is more about that kind of like that basic universalism that I think we have talked about before. But anyone want to talk about the parents and kind of the ending of coming together? Dom?
Just Wim's dad was awesome. It was fun. It was fun. He was such a pain through 7.5 episodes. So to see him out there having fun and being a part of it, that was good. I liked it a lot.
I mean, I think it also speaks to, it doesn't matter how old you are, you can still change. You can still be inspired to come together, especially, I mean, that's the thing. A lot of adults, a lot of fear that adults have is that, that the world is changing without them. But also the biggest fear for parents is that is the world safe for my kids? And so when the thing they thought was safe turns out to be unsafe, they have an opportunity to step up and act differently. And yeah, here they do. Here they are. I mean, and quite quickly too. Like you can do it. You can figure it out, guys. You can actually turn around and be inspired by your kids, and let that drive you. Listen to your kids. Listen to the crises that they're in, and for kids who are maybe a little older, right? Listen to those crises and say, okay, the society we've built, this is amazing allegory. This isn't serving our kids. This isn't helping. We can, the world we've left for them. This is a great note to boomers, right? Boomers who want to actually say, okay, the housing market, different things than suburban, the housing market, the reliance on kind of this unthinking reliance on technology, all these things, we can actually, those of us who are older, we can change and we can grow as well. It's never too late.
Agreed. I just want to go over a couple of things individually with the kids, even though we don't want to just mush them as a big group. I'll just start with KB because I love KB disability representation here. Obviously she can still walk, but she's kind of I think she's a cyborg. I think we can legit say she is a cyborg. Also, just it's nice to see more positive cyborg representation. I never heard people critique Star Wars for negative cyborg representation, although it's like No, got Luke Skywalker. So what am I saying? You got the good stuff, even though Vader's also a machine, half machine too. I mean, more machine than man, and twisted and evil. But like with Luke, it's like he got the robot arm. He's okay. It's good to see that. Just kind of see someone who's gonna clearly, there's a reason why she's kind of sheltered, but she's also trying to be just as normal as possible. Um, and I love that, and I get where kind of Fern comes from of like wanting to treat your disabled friends as normal as possible because that's something that it's a balance for sure. Of like you want to for someone with a disability you want to treat them as humanly normal as possible, but also you still kind of have to remember it's like, oh yeah, I can't go to this house because there's stairs, cursed stairs. My arch enemy. So I think that was a nice little thing of like seeing Fern like like, hey, you can do anything, but also kind of realizing actually no, you can't do everything, but not in like a cruel way, just in like you can't do this right because your thingies are corroding. So I appreciate that about KB quite a lot. And Wim is just your typical, is very much built in the mold of Luke Skywalker, with also parental issues. Although he gets a nice ending with his dad, so no burning Wim senior dad. Thank you. But he wants to kind of be the helper. He wants to be a hero. It's funny that he might have switched his dream from Jedi to X-wing pilot. But who knows? Maybe in the new era of Force users, where it seems like anyone can use it, he might try to tap into some stuff. I wouldn't mind it. Maybe an older Wim finds Ray and Ray can help him out. That'd be cool. Does anyone want to bring up anything specific about Dom? Do you want to bring up anything specific about like Wim or KB or the kids individually?
Nobody in Star Wars knows how to scowl quite like Fern.
Love Fern.
Ryan Kara Armstrong, she nailed that part. I mean, she was terrific across the board, but she had the ability to really just give everybody the stink eye in a way that was very very entertaining. But yeah, I don't know. I sort of don't know what to say about them beyond like what we said about them collectively, because each one individually plays such a critical role in the story, but it is always the group that as a whole that brings everything together and saves the day. So all four of them were excellent, and all four of them did a fantastic job sharing the screen with Jude Law.
Yeah.
Well,
that's true.
as a good. Oh, unless you want.
Well, I do want to
Okay.
mention. I mean, with KB and in contrast to other cyborg characters, I mean, Vader's also a cyborg, but we don't see. What am I trying to say here? This is the first time I can recall where it's very clear that her implants and her modifications are meant to be a disability representation, because we see how clearly how it affects her life limitations. Even with Lobot, Charles Soule goes into this a lot more in the ongoing with Lobot and everything. In the Lando comic from a number of years back. But on screen, seeing the way seeing even Dark Droids as well. But again, going back to that moment, seeing how she just stops, she can't go on. Yeah, Joel, you bring up really important point about disability representation, right? The balance there, seeing the way Wim then responds, and again, that's a moment where the crew really comes together. Is seeing, I mean, that's the thing about KB. Her implants, yeah, they cause her to be vulnerable in a very specific way. They're also her strength. They're also her, part of what lets her tap into the ship. She already has this facility with engineering and technology, so that definitely helps with the story. And so she's able to really meaningfully contribute to the crew, to what they're doing, to this group of friends, because of what the circumstances of her life are. and yeah, that I thought was fantastic. And Joel, hopefully that you found it meaningful. Yeah, so that specifically, Neil. They wanted to say something about Neil. I love the way we're actually meant to take him seriously. That's the different thing. We could have he could have been played for laughs, and yeah, he's funny. He has some humorous moments. But my recollection from those kinds of films in the 80s and 90s where he's just the nose picking nerd who kind of he's comic relief. He actually ends up being the moral core of the team, right? He's the one who's again, yeah, it's a naive thing to say, why can't you all just get along? But it isn't a naive thing necessarily, right? In the face to say that in the face of conflict, to say, again, this is that point. What are we fighting for? What is this? Does this conflict, does that even matter? Isn't there more to life than calling claimsies, right? He's the one who's, oh yeah, that checks out, calling claimsies. Those funny moments at the beginning, but yeah, he was really in a really essential point that he's taken seriously for this story, for this crew to progress forward. And so that again speaks to how all four of them, this perfect recipe of these different archetypes that are kind of the kid versions of those archetypes. That I think with Wim, he is specifically the younger. It's an archetype that's specific to younger characters, like the Luke Skywalker, but clearly younger. Yeah, they just all four of them just do a really good job being that mix. So
yeah. So we talked about the group. Let's talk about the one character who we can't talk about individual. The one, the only, Jude Law as Jod. Or some people just call him Jude Law at this point.
or whatever his name is.
Right. I love Jod. I think Jod probably is my favorite character. He is such a fascinating character, not just in terms of himself, but just in terms of like Star Wars characters and their archetypes as well. He is probably the most unique bad guy character in these shows, maybe even just in these movies in general. Because he doesn't start out as a bad guy until like he's a bad guy to like the beginning and then the end. But he's also like, it's just interesting to compare him to the wider universe of Star Wars as well, in the context of the wider universe and kind of that focus thing. Which is something we should probably do an episode on Matthew in itself, because this is more fascinating the more I think about it. Because like, he is a character who in this story, yeah, he probably is the worst character. He is he almost threatens to kill the kids to a certain extent, but he doesn't, and you can tell he doesn't really want to. But in the wider context of Star Wars, he lives in terms of like the plethora of Star Wars bad guys. He's like at the bottom tier in terms of like evil compared to like, we got the Emperor, we got Thrawn, we got Vader, we got Tarkin.
He's more mixed, to be sure.
Yeah, definitely more mixed. This is very much a character who I think leans in the gray, not the gray side of the Force, of course, but you know what I mean. Like if moral grayness is a thing, this is where Jod definitely lands. And I just think he was fascinating. I mean, Jude Law just gives a performance of a lifetime here. And I love his background of he's not we were always wondering, what is he? Is he an Order 66 survivor? No, he's a post-Order 66 survivor, I guess. He is a character who could have been one of those Jedi. You've compared him to Caden, Dominic. I'm gonna challenge you just a little bit. He could have been an Ezra. He's like if Caden ever found Ezra, and Ezra kind of went down a darker path, or like if something really bad happened to Caden too early on, without the Ghost Crew around to kind of be that moral support. Because he's not of the temple. I'll get to.
He's kind of Ventress.
He is a little bit like Ventress, but Ventress had some time in the temple too.
Yeah, but if Dooku never got a hold of her, she's kind of Ventress. But reality is he's his own thing. But I get where you're coming. I get where you're coming from. And now that we know
Mhm.
ultimately where
Mhm.
his backstory, right, is definitely more Ezra than Kanan for sure.
Yeah, and I kind of love just the morality where he's on, where, like when he's threatening to kill the kids, you can tell he really doesn't want to. Like I feel like he really doesn't want to hurt the kids. Maybe not because he's grown to love them, but maybe a little bit. But it's like he doesn't want to be just cruel for cruelty's sake. Like compared to even Darth Vader, like where no hesitation. The Emperor would have done it and laughed and just would have dragged it out for his own pleasure. Tarkin be like, "You may fire on these kids when ready." But Jaw's like, "No, I don't." Like even the assault on the planet, he doesn't. I don't think he wants too many people to die, if anyone. Just yeah, use them for workers, but also he wants to keep them alive. So I just think Jawd is a fascinating bad guy. But Dominic, I'll toss it to you again. What do you think of Jawd?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely onto it. Where he's the villain, he's the antagonist. He's willing to go to uh, bad places, but more than anybody, more than most Star Wars villains, we're meant to believe that this isn't really his choice. This isn't really what he wants to do. Um, he would rather probably have a nice peaceful life, but the circumstances of his existence have led him to feel that there is no other choices available for him. And so that's why he's making these decisions. And those moments where he does act like a good guy, I don't think it's fully an act. I don't think he's necessarily trying to deceive the kids. The scene between him and Wim in, I think it's episode 5 or episode 6, where Wim is feeling like a little bit sad, and he gives him a real genuine pep talk, and kind of gets him to feel good again. I don't think he's necessarily intentionally deceiving Wim. I think, yes, I think he knows that eventually he's going to, betray the kids, that he's going to take control of the ship. But I don't think he necessarily wants anything negative to happen. He tells Fern, just yield, just yield. He's constantly trying. He does seem to try to avoid violence when it comes to these kids until he feels he has no other choices. So yeah, he's definitely the villain, definitely a bad guy, but he's a complicated bad guy, and you love to see it, especially in a show where because the kids are the main characters, the morality could be very simple, but they added these really wonderful shades of gray, and Jude Law was just so good on screen. He was so charismatic, so charming, so much fun to watch, and I think he covers for some of the more kid aspects of the performance. All 4 of the kids are very good performers, but they do have, some of the child actor isms. And I think Jude Law is so good he kind of covers for them, which is good. You need that in a performance in a show like this. So
Mhm.
yeah, amazing stuff.
Agreed, and I also agree with you, Dominic, that they could have taken the easy route of our evil pirate. I'm just evil, but no,
Yeah.
they went more complicated with Jawd. But Matthew, your thoughts on Jawd?
Yeah. Again, thinking about point of view and harping on this, the moment we all wondered what's his backstory. We're gonna get even Jude Law saying we're gonna get a hint of his backstory. We get it. We don't get details. We only get the contrast with Wim. And he says, "You had a very happy, privileged childhood. Not everyone gets that." And the anger and the the bitterness and the almost the longing behind that comment was so telling. We don't necessarily need to know what the details are. Uh, because because it doesn't matter in the moment. What matters in the moment is that this is partly why he's like Dom, you're saying the circumstances of his life, why he's a danger for these kids. Um, even the point of view of the other pirates, that first scene, right? And one of the things, yeah, well, first of all, I'll say that first scene where he's kind of a failed pirate. He's definitely led them on these wild bantha chases that have turned up to nothing. He's desperate. He puts him in this desperate position. I also really like the fact, kind of like Chimera, how this wasn't really a secret, wasn't really, just this very intense, who is this character, uh more than anything, any other thing. I mean, that's the thing I've talked about this show a lot, is it doesn't trade its tension on mysteries like with John. We all kind of figure it out, okay, yeah, he's the guy at the beginning there with the mask. Great. Okay, let's go. Like, again, he serves his desperation, his willingness. Also, maybe understanding his ability to ultimately lead a crew. It just, that he's, failed and failed again, almost obsessive with kind of these mysteries of maybe not so much at Adam, but uh, going the extra mile, trying to find the score, trying to find the score. Yeah, because he's so driven. Maybe because he's so driven. That's the thing. He's so driven to find that peaceful life. He wants to retire. He wants to, sit pretty. That's why he goes on these kind of spurious not spurious little things. Just these spurious quests that turn up nothing. Of course, it's pretty clear he's gone on a bunch of them, and the rest of them aren't having it, and so there's the mutiny. And yeah, everything about him. Yeah, Dom, you were talking about, the performance, making up for some of the kid things. Yeah, clearly that this layered nuance thing of wanting to do what he can while also doing what he believes he has to do. It's also an interesting contrast then with the parents, right? Here's an adult who doesn't see the need to turn, or doesn't see the need to change. Obviously, they're not his kids in danger. He's the one putting them in danger. But that is almost a "it's too late for me, son" moment in that way. Yeah, that. And also, again, different kind of force user. That was also interesting to see, playing with Wim's expectations and his hopes of finding, the Jedi of old, playing with the whole planet's expectations with this emissary role, having that quick thinking to say, "Oh yeah, I'm the emissary. Do what I say. Do what I say." Uh, and playing up what people play up with the Jedi, and saying, this can be easily abused. And so, not necessarily by the Order, although again, we'll see what trajectory how Republic sends things on. But yeah, whole bunch of all these complicated layers coming together, and yeah, hopefully
I
we see more of him.
I also liked, again, that with the pirate angle, that they
Mhm.
make very good use of this era, because I think,
Yeah,
especially in
that's
fiction,
true.
um, you can kind of make pirates your good guys. I mean, Han Solo, they call a pirate, he's the pirate with the heart of gold at the end. It's easier to make pirates the good guys when your galactic government is basically evil incarnate and the Emperor rules all. So, it's like, we're pirates, but we either rob from the rich or we just attack Imperial, even though we're still cutthroat. Um, Here, I think it's good use of, like, pirates aren't necessarily good guys. And also, but I also think it's interesting that, you know, it's another example of Jod is, he's a trauma survivor. It's not Order 66. It's just the trauma the Empire itself inflicted upon everyone through their small cruelties to their bigger ones with Death Stars, depending on where you were lived. Um, and that's kind of unfortunate. Jod's responsible for his own actions, but he is kind of both victim of the Empire, even though unfortunately he kind of made worse decisions because of it. Matthew, you were nodding. Do you want to go into that if you have anything you want to add?
Not so much, just listen, vibing. Yeah, all good.
Dominic, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think you nailed it.
Okay. Well, we're almost 2 hours in. I've gone through all the characters. I didn't go through SMN33. Love him. I'm so glad he lived.
The best.
Yeah. I love the fact that he's now just kind of the kid's new friend. He's like, yay, pirate friend. I also kind of love the fact that I feel like he was secretly always loyal to the kids, but he like totally just bought claims.
Yeah.
It's like good enough for me. Punch.
Not entirely dependent on the programming and the code or whatever. Just always able to actually interpret things in the moment.
L3 would be proud.
Yes.
Yeah, I think he knew. He knew. Um, and I'll just say one of my favorite moments in the show, I think, was the Order 66 moment. Just because it's like I don't know, I just felt like Jaw was like really like, oh, this lost planet. It's like no one knows about the Jedi. And it's like actually the last communication from the Republic was that the Jedi had betrayed us all, and it's like um. There's lots of speculation, like how do they know that? Even though it seems like this planet was lost, I heard a good theory that like when that communication went out, Palpatine was just like, just all the communications, all of them. I don't care. Even the ones that we don't use anymore. Just tell everyone the Jedi suck, and they're all dead. Did I say so? Because I'm Palpatine. We're starting this empire. And then just in case, you want to make sure every Jedi's dead. So maybe that's how they knew.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I guess for final thoughts, the show is so good, so self-contained. If it gets to season 2, great. Not holding my breath, sadly, but at the same time, this is one of those shows where it's like it really did feel like a one and done, and it did have a very conclusive ending. Where unfortunately, Acolyte very much was setting up stuff with Plagueis being all. "Ooh."
Mhm.
So that was nice. I do think the show can be something that other shows and books build upon in terms of like what does happen to all that money on Atten.
Mhm.
But as you've talked about, Matthew, that's not really what this show's about. The political machinations of the money don't really matter outside of the pirates want it for their own reasons. But in terms of like, yes, secret First Order spies are there, and it's Palpatine clones, and Ziono's gonna muck up the works. That's not what this story's about.
Yeah.
Um, I hope we get to see the kids. I would love to find out that Neil and Wim and Fern are Resistance pilots. Maybe Wim is and Fern is a pirate, Resistance pilot later in their life or something. I think Wim might act. I think Neil might stay on at Atten, but like kind of as home base and kind of do some good stuff from there. And KP does KP stuff. But yeah, overall, I love the show, and I hope more people watch it as now as kind of time goes by and we kind of can look back on it. But Dominic, final thoughts? Anything you want to add that I didn't?
I'll just echo what you said. I love the show. I want there to be a second season. I do feel like there is enough left unsaid in the finale that there's more to pick up on. I think there is still a possibility of a second season, though. Like you, I'm not necessarily very optimistic about it. Um, and I think if they knew definitively it was one and done, I think maybe the New Republic's arrival, we would have, and what happens to Jod would have been not like I'm not saying we would have gotten like a whole lot more, but we just would have gotten a little bit more than we did. I think those things were left intentionally uh more vague than they would be if the show was being intentionally wrapped up and so that there is something that could be played within a second season. But I don't expect there to be one, though. As I frequently say, I hope to be wrong. I like being wrong about these things, and I hope that there is a second season because the first season was just so good. The kids were great, Jude Law was great, SM33 was great, the adventure was great, the wonder was great, the pirates were fantastic, and it was just a good story, well told. Good story, well told.
Yeah, well-oiled machine. Just maybe I was talking to with some friends with we kind of compared and contrasted Acolyte and Skeleton Crew. No, we both like show we both like, and someone kind of said, maybe Skeleton Crew doesn't have the same kind of ambition in terms of like really deconstructing a Star Wars story and like really challenging like Jedi and Sith and what that all means. But its execution it could have been better in some places. Wow, with Skeleton Crew, maybe the ambition wasn't, and when I say ambition, I mean like
Yeah.
something that really challenges me is like, oh my god, very simple story, but it's like just the execution was on point. Every episode, kind of a more or less a well-oiled machine. But Matt, I'll toss it to you. What are your?
Yeah, I mean, look back. I'm trying to think. I'm hard pressed to think. In terms of just storytelling, coherence and setup and payoff and pacing and editing, all those things that I only sort of know about. I'm hard pressed to think of a better live action Star Wars show or season. To be honest, and yeah, Mando seasons 1 and 2 were great. I mean, maybe because this had a bit more mystery to it, so it was kind of more appealing. Maybe a more through line story. So that, yeah, it was really just like I said, the introduction, just this pleasant surprise of definitely one of the best crafted shows Star Wars has done, period. Right. Going back all the way to Clone Wars, right? Which is saying something a whole heck of a lot. I don't know. I mean, I get what you mean in terms of things being left off a little bit in details. I'm wondering, I'm concerned that if we got a second season, it would almost lose the luster of the first a little bit. I don't know. I could be wrong too. They'd have to do something different. Certainly, it'd be a whole different thing to explore because the mystery of the planet is solved, and getting back there and where it is and all that. Would be about the planet leaving the moisture farm and rejoining the galaxy. That is interesting. I don't know if it necessarily needs to be a show. Also to know that these kids, they still got to go through high school. Still got to, that's also an interesting thing.
The prom season. We need a prom season.
But then I think it's more likely this might feel cheap. I think it's more likely that we'll pick up with them later in life. Maybe not so much of the Rey film, probably the Filoni film and something, right? That they are more integrated into the New Republic and that these kids are now more grown up. So maybe, I mean, I hope they don't just say what happened in some kind of one-off dialogue, what happened to Jod, what happened to whatever, but also to say, look, in terms of how At-Atten reintegrated with the wider galaxy, what happened to the money, that is the kind of thing that exposition would be good for, because it is lore backstory. And so to have that more in, those questions answered for the fans that watch the show. But again, I like you said, Dom, I hope I'm wrong.
Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire, Volume 2. Add the At-Atten stuff now into it, please.
Yeah, Christian Show. Beaumont Kin. Now Beaumont Kin's discovered that Atten, goes there and finds all the. Oh man, he'd love that place. He'd love that place. Yeah.
He would. He's got all the
history.
He would. Yeah.
I do need to see that. I need to see Beaumont Kin going out and just discovering everything. I'm being serious. It's funny, but I'm being serious. I want to see him figure all that out. Anyway,
get on it and come on our show. Yeah, but I think that will do it. I think that Skeleton Crew for now. We close the chapter on the Skeleton Crew. I hope to go back to it. I probably will eventually. I need to go back and rewatch things. I don't do that enough, and I feel bad about it. But I hope to go back and to talk about points of view, Matthew. It is kind of funny that 2025. Or just, the last 3 shows, we have Acolyte, which is from a point of view of very morally gray characters all around, very, very, very complicated. The reason why our friend's daughter Ferrex did an ACAB Jedi episode when that show ended. Then the show, very whimsical, very wondrous. There's some darkness, but, it's very from the point of view of the kids. And then next is Andor, baby. Time to get the politics and kind of remind, like, we're just gonna watch it and go like, "Oh God, this is happening right now." And like, too real, too. Yeah, I love that. I love that. I think Star Wars is all about that. So, yeah, everybody, I think that does it. I think we did it.
Yeah. Dom, do you have any last comments? Things you want to pick up?
About Skeleton Crew? No,
Yeah,
I think
sure.
I think we're good.
Right. Yeah, and that book that's sitting, that soft cover book that's on the table there, definitely. Yeah, talk about real
Lucky
world right
I
now.
want
It's
it.
stressful.
I want
It's
it so bad.
fascinating, but sometimes it's stressful. I'm only how many
want-
chapters in?
I want that book
You
so
can
bad.
see. Dom, can you show where I'm in the bookmark? Yes.
Only
Sure.
chapter
I forget.
10, 11.
Okay,
We
there we
gotta
go.
get
Yeah,
this
I
done
know.
by March 10th.
I know. I got to finish it by February 25th when it comes out. Anyways, on that note, it's a good place to wrap things up. Thanks everyone for joining us in the chat, joining us in the comments, yeah, and whatnot. Yeah, please do let us know what you thought of our conversation tonight. What you thought of Trials of the Jedi, thought of the future of Disney Plus streaming, Oscars, all the different things we chat about. If you have any great Revenge of the Sith memorabilia, Revenge of the Sith at 20, that's the party. We're gonna keep it rolling for sure. Sorry. There you go. But yeah, for now, good place to wrap things up. So let us know. Comment below. The comment boxes ain't going anywhere. They're there. So please do let us know on all the socials. And yeah, give this video a like and a share. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. See Dom with a thumbs up there. Dom, thanks as always for joining us. Great conversation. And where can they find you on the internet?
You can find me on the Star Wars Underworld podcast every week. We're live on Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern, and then it's released in your podcast feeds very shortly afterwards. And you can also read my ramblings about Star Wars and occasionally other things on my Substack, DominicGJones.substack.com, aka Hoth Off the Press.
There you go. And the link for that is in the description below, I do believe. So please do give that a look. Joel, great discussion as always. Thanks for leading us through the Skeleton Crew bit, or not bit, more than a bit. A good chunk there. Where can they find you on the internet?
You can find me at JID20234 on Blue Sky, JID20234 on Blue Sky. And I'm mostly on the Star Wars Underworld Discord. And much like Matthew's journey into watching more movies, I, too, have been trying to do more movie nights on the Star Wars Underworld Discord by watching movies that also have inspired Star Wars, or just things that have inspired newer Star Wars. Like, for example, we watched Land Before Time because the kids of that movie have Skeleton Crew vibes. And a couple of weeks or months ago, we watched a movie called 633 Squadron, an old 60s movie about Air Force pilots that inspired George and Red Squadron and all the Death Star stuff. So we're trying to also expand our repertoire of movies beyond just the typical superhero and blockbuster movies. And we also watched, of course, Treasure Planet, another Skeleton Crew inspired movie. Well, at least we think it is, because there's some sort of Star Warsy stuff in there.
Sure.
So we're trying to also expand our repertoire of film through the movie nights.
There you go. So keep an eye. Join the Discord server. Keep an eye on the announcements to know when the next one coming up is. You can follow me on Twitter, or the Bird app, NEUG45. I'm still there. Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky, MNEUG1138. Also Instagram at beaches.foodie, FOODIE. Got some good fried chicken on there. If you like fried chicken, grab a photo of that. Fill your digital gullet there, Jojo. There, and of course, this Wednesday on the Tractor Beam, Wednesday 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Legacy of Vader #1 and our Tempest Breaker review. It's gonna be fun. Gonna be good. Good quality, solid episode. Giving the Ion Canon treatment to Tempest Breaker, to this comic book in continuity story there in High Republic. So please do check that out. Chris Abbott, Joel Davis, and I going live 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific Wednesday on the right here on the Underworld YouTube channel and Facebook and Twitch and Ion Canon Twitch as well. Until then, next week we're continuing the point of view discussion. This just happened to be what we thought of doing, talking about objectivity or points of view, how reliable is kind of the camera perspective.
Do we take Star Wars stories at face value too often?
Yeah, this is the question there. So please do join us right back here Mondays 5:30 p.m. Pacific, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, as we can follow us along, etc., etc. Also, again, as Dom mentioned, the flagship 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on Thursday. Check that out. But until then, let's blow this thing and head home.